This weekend, something special's happening. UFC 290, Marcin Prachnio putting butts in seats, looking to do the impossible. Snatch the O from Vitor Petrino. Matt, you have a saying around here with Fight Night Picks about these type of fights and maybe canceling plans. What do you talk about when you say that?
Nobody's ever canceled their Saturday plans because Marcin Prachnio is about to fight. Like, honey, sorry, I know we got dinner reservations. I know you want to go see Barbie followed by Oppenheimer, but listen. Vitor Petrino's fighting Marcin Prachnio.
Double feature. I'm going to put it to the test. I'm going to ask my wife if she's excited about the Marcin Prachnio match on the weekend.
All right, so this is a test. There's a big light heavyweight fight coming up this weekend. Petrino's taking on Marcin Prachnio. We're going to put it to the test. I know exactly what Matt's going to say in this video, so let's give it a go. I mean, follow me. We're going to leave the office. The dishwasher's going. We're going to go a little impromptu. Okay, coming up this weekend, big pay-per-view fight. Vitor Petrino is fighting Marcin Prachnio. Will you be watching?
No.
Okay.
Well, maybe if I showed her the one championship highlights, maybe that would get her excited. But if you watch Marcin Prachnio when he fought with one championship, I don't know why they let the guy go, really. I mean, he's kind of like a Muin Gafurov. Muin, 3-3 over there, but against really good competition. Well, those were the losses. And then he becomes the great with the LFA. He's in the UFC now. For a guy like Marcin Prachnio, comes on in off that win against just an absolute man mountain of Georgi Stanho, didn't have the nickname. Looked like a human gummy bear of muscles. It was Gilberto Galvao. And in that matchup, I mean, Marcin landing those kicks. Marcin making it count. Marcin marches into the UFC as a favorite against Sam Alvey, and then he marches across the cage like he's got the biggest grocery bags you've ever seen. Hands down, walks into a hook from Sam Alvey, and smiling Sam, it's over. So Prachnio picks up the pieces. He loses to Magomed Ankalaev, who I wish his fight wasn't a draw against Blachowicz at 282. But if you look at it for Prachnio, it's been really weird. He then goes out and gets finished by Slow Mike Rodriguez. Half of the guys that got beat by Mike Rodriguez in the UFC, you're looking at one of them in Prachnio. But the resolve out of this guy and the fact that they kept him around the promotion, it really is nice to see. I mean, you look at the recent string of wins. He fought William Knight his last time out. Knight didn't seem all that interested in fighting in that one. And I have the striking numbers.
It was hard to take a lot from that fight because Knight was just
79-8 were the significant strikes. William Knight went 8 of 33 on strike attempts. He threw 3 significant strikes that landed in the first round, 1 in the second round, and 4 in the third round.
Isn't it wild that we almost saw the evolution of Prachnio in that Khalil Roundtree fight? It was like, we're the more of the same, right? He's getting hurt by big shots. This fight's going to be over. But he didn't stay down. That was the difference. Like, he kept on getting up, and we didn't see that resolve that he had, and he was able to keep the fight at range in some portions. Now, I thought of a fun name. Hopefully you'll appreciate this. Carlo Pedersoli was a guy who fought in the UFC, and he liked to use his footwork. He would throw a lot of, I would say, much stiffer kicks, but he was a guy who liked to use a lot of his range, and we never really saw the best version of him in the UFC. For Prachnio, they're not mirrors of each other, but when he is at his best, it's not when he is moving forward, kind of being that meathead that we saw in the Sam Alvey fight. It's when he is really letting his strikes and his kicks flow for themselves, but he's like a weird version of Krzysztof Jotko, I guess, and this is why, because
they're both Polish?
No. He has a lot more pop on his shots, I would say. Like, his shots are more damaging when he's able to land them consistently, but the difference is Jotko doesn't get hit by a lot of clean shots. He will use his footwork almost a little bit too much as an elusiveness and not aggressively, but for Prachnio, he is willing to stand in that pocket for the extra second, but we've seen him get caught so many times now.
And that is the tricky thing when you look at a guy like Prachnio. I mean, he was a really big underdog when he fought Khalil Roundtree. Good first round, good third round, so he ends up getting the decision win. Performance bonus against Ike Villanueva. The kicks were on point, and that's the thing about Prachnio. He's really, really tricky to try and figure out what he's going for because he'll mix the kicks to the legs, the body, and to the head. He's a black belt in Kyokushinkai Karate, and you see that out of his style. And when you consider a guy like Prachnio that fought at middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight before he came into the UFC, it's really impressive to see the package. When it's on, it really is on. And if you look at Prachnio, even in the loss that he had against PFL millionaire Felipe Lins, he was able to win a round in that, but Lins was able to, at the very end of it, get some of the takedowns and wear on Prachnio. So what does that mean for a fight like this against Vitor Petrino? Well, Prachnio training a little bit in the Netherlands for this matchup with none other than former top man over with Bellator, Costello Van Steenis, a guy who just lost to Douglas Lima, but has a win by split decision over eventual, it's coming up in September, Bellator middleweight title challenger Fabian Edwards. He's fighting Johnny Eblen. That's exciting stuff. But if you look at it for Prachnio, you're working your striking against Costello Van Steenis. That's awesome to see, especially for a matchup against Vitor Petrino, because this friggin' guy, you just can't get rid of him. Petrino's first pro fight, he knocks out Bolado. Then he goes to Dana White's Contender Series against, right now, today, as we film this video, LFA light heavyweight champ Adolfo Bolado. And in that Dana White's Contender Series 3-round main event, first round, Bolado, shorthand through the guard, it drops Vitor Petrino, and it looks like Bolado's going to win the fight. And then in the second round, Petrino comes out guns a-blazing, and he gets the win over Bolado. Petrino in his UFC debut, he ends up getting the former IMMAF champ, the wrestling champ out of Sweden, Anton Turkalj, and they grappled. And in the first round, Matt, at 2 minutes and 17 seconds when it's on the clock, did Anton Turkalj kiss Vitor Petrino on the cheek? It wasn't like Yoel Romero when he kissed Luke Rockhold, because that really happened.
It did.
It might have just been involuntary.
A phantom kiss.
I mean, we're talking about the pleasure man, Matt. But if you look at it for Vitor Petrino, his striking really won out that fight. And I know the grappling went a little 50-50. Petrino ends up getting the win and out-grappled the grappler.
Had good offensive takedown.
But the striking was on point for Petrino. The only thing that scares me a little bit when you watch these Petrino fights, and I even liked just the complete, well-rounded performance that he had over with UAE Warriors against Gatchimarad and Tigulov. He got the win over there, and he was able to get it done everywhere. But Petrino's one of those guys that big, muscled up. I made the comparison last week, and I said Bruno Fajeda's taking on Nursultan Ruzboyev.
Prachnio's a big guy for the weight class, too.
So I said Fajeda's one of those guys, no losses, all finishes. He's big, he's muscled up. Vitor Petrino is the same way, and Vitor showed me a little bit more his last time out and going 3 rounds and expending all that he needed to expend in the wrestling. But boy, oh boy, like even in the Bolado fight, halfway through the first round, he's got his hands down near his knees and he's taking a couple of breaths. He's a guy that burns hot, and it worries me even against Marcin Prachnio.
And I think more than anything, this fight for Petrino is to see just how well he can pace himself over 3 rounds, because I think the threat of the wrestling is going to be important. Not the fact that he's going to go out there and just dominate Prachnio with the wrestling, but if he can put it in the back of his mind to make him more willing to move backwards and get his back up against the cage, it's going to eliminate a lot of the offense that Prachnio is able to employ himself, because we brought it up so many times now. He moves on almost like a half crescent type moon. He will switch stances to throw his kicks. He will feint a lot of his kicks.
I think that's just a crescent moon.
It is just a crescent moon. But he will feint a lot of his kicks and then, of course, use his kicks a lot. But if you get him up against the cage and pressure him, it's not going to allow him to use that dynamic movement nearly as much. And again, the thing I worry about, though, is let's say Petrino gets him down early, right? Could that be the worst thing for him? Because he will start to burn a little bit hotter. Prachnio might make him work just that extra little bit that he has to where once the fight is going down the stretch, maybe Prachnio can hit him with some shots. But I do tend to agree with what you brought up, especially with the Lins fight. We did see Lins start to get closer to Prachnio, especially as that fight progressed. So I think Petrino has not a complete game plan to follow, but can follow some of those similarities.
The low hands, they concern me. It doesn't matter really what minute of the fight. Like I said, Petrino will lower them as the first round goes on, but they're really low, and he picks power over defense against a guy like Prachnio, who, although he's lost a lot of fights by finish, defensively he's sound enough because of the movement on the outside, and his kicks to the head of a guy like Petrino. Petrino's got to bring his hands up from about his thigh up to his head. That could spell disaster for a guy like Vitor Petrino. I mean, you saw that when Prachnio punched his ticket from one championship to the UFC when he beat that ball of muscle Galval. So if you look at the matchup, Petrino is a pretty big favorite. I hazard a guess that the fans think the same thing over on Topology. I'm going to say over under 85% going with Vitor Petrino.
I'll say over.
You're going to say over? It is over. 981 total votes, 88% Petrino, 75% by knockout for the 12% that are Prachnio, 65% by decision. Petrino trains with, we're talking about these PFL fighters at CM System. Petrino trains with Mateus Scheffel, who's made it close to the top of the mountain, but never the winner, always the bridesmaid. He was also on Dana White's Contender Series. He got finished. So I do like Petrino with the overall game plan, but I do worry about him in this fight and every other one he has in the UFC.
Again, for me, it comes down to where is the fight IQ of Petrino. If he can be really technical and use his forward pressure and aggressiveness to not get hit by big shots and more just to eliminate the movement of Prachnio, I think he can get the win, and for that reason, I agree with you.
Dusty in a good way. Uppercuts from Petrino when the fight gets close, and He's one of, and like after 2020, there's rare fighters of these, Matt. Vitor Petrino will be fighting in his third venue in Vegas since he made his Zuffa endeavor. He fought at the Apex when he was on Dana White's Contender Series. He fought at the hotel, the Virgin Hotel there, when they had the fights against Anton Turkalj. Now he's going to be at T-Mobile, so some pretty cool stuff for Petrino. Both of us have the Brazilian to get the win. Some big-time fights in this card, including an absolute flyweight showcase in the co-main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.